Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Film Study for 11 Warriors. I'm Kyle Jones. Today, we are talking about Ohio State's 42-3 win over Minnesota last weekend in the Horseshoe. A long day for many Buckeye fans. Perhaps you enjoyed a few pops at the 11 Dub Gate beforehand, but everyone that was there seemed to have a great time, unless you were a Gopher fan, of course. Now, big coming out party for Julian Sayin. That is the main headline for this game. 23 of 27 for 326 and a trio of touchdown passes. Now, it wasn't just his ball placement, his throwing ability that stood out to me. And we're going to dig into a few of the ways that I felt this was his coming out party from a post-snap decision-making perspective. A number of plays, they put the trust in his hand and really allowed him to make a lot of decisions where the ball goes. And again, not just in the drop-back passing game, but really making the entire offense his own. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, we are going to talk about some of the adjustments that were made. Minnesota was able to really move the ball effectively in their first drive before kicking a field goal. However, that was really the only time all night that they were able to move the ball. Let's talk a little bit about what Patricia and the Ohio State defense was able to do, as well as what the Gophers ultimately set out to do with their own game plan. We're starting to see teams really start to find some tendencies and find some ways to attack, but every week we're seeing Patricia and company start to adapt. Now, I do want to apologize for some of the technical difficulties. We had some audio issues with some of the videos, so I apologize in advance, but hopefully there's still a lot of good stuff to dig into, so let's do it. I want to start out by talking about the run game, and you'll understand why here in a second. What we're going to see here is we're going to get a tight end coming down in motion, and it's going to end up being what we call a split zone, right? This is just a zone blocking play, and I think this is important to call out because zone blocking is different than what we've seen. Not that they haven't run zone, but Ohio State's really majored in what we call gap scheme. And so this is a zone look. We'll show a little bit about what we mean when we show the end zone view here, but you can see all of this space coming on an outside zone look. Again, this is from an under center, which allows Bo Jackson to be able to have his head up and his shoulders a little bit more squared to the line. Now he's able to bounce it outside and get a big gain out of this. Is fairly later in the game, but that's not important. What I want to show is, again, the scheme that Ohio State was having a lot of success with on the ground. Now, they're using the tight end as an additional blocker on the interior rather than standing out on the edge, although Thurman here you can see is lined up on the right side. You're going to get another tight end who's going to motion in, but this is important because we saw a ton of Coy Parrish, who's Minnesota's best player regardless of side of the ball, right? He's a free safety, but he spent a lot of time climbing down into the box. He was blitzing much the same way that Ohio State uses Caleb Downs as an additional player in the box. We saw the Gophers do the same thing with Parrish. However, Ohio State was able to account for him, and I'm going to show you Parrish specifically because Austin Saravel's going to make a great play here in a second. We'll slow it down just so everybody can watch this more easily. We're going to get this motion across with Bennett Christian, right? And you can see on the right side of the screen, they're all stepping right and getting the man in that zone to the right side. Meanwhile, Christian's going to come across and he's going to seal the edge. Now, initially, Saravel, you can see he's stepping to his right, but he recognizes this blitz from Parrish and he actually peels off. He could very easily just go block that end and hope that Bennett Christian, hits a moving target that's one of the best athletes on the field. And instead he goes, you know what? I'm going to leave the end for Bennett Christian and I'm going to go pick up Parrish and seal the backside. Now, when that happens on the backside, there's nothing but room out front. Now, Luke Montgomery, not his best rep, but it's enough to slow down the defensive tackle. You'd hope that Bo Jackson can beat defensive tackle around the edge, and we see great work. Phil Daniels absolutely sealing that edge. You see Thurman blocking downfield. You see Mylan Graham, the receiver, all the way downfield. Right, there's plenty of room here, and this is just simple zone blocking. This happens when you major in gap scheme and you're able to mix it up. It allows you to be a little bit better in both, and Ohio State's proven an ability to execute both well now. Okay, now why did we just talk about the run game when we thought we were going to talk about the passing game? This is a perfect example why. We get a tight end. This is Max Clear motioning into the backfield. And you can see you've got a tight end and a tailback back there. This is really a modern day I formation play. Now, it doesn't look like it because you've got a quarterback in the shotgun. You might be wondering, what are you talking about? This is newfangled spread offense. But what we're going to see on this play is this is really the old ISO play. Now it's a version of zone blocking again. We saw the split zone on the play before where the tight end kicks out the edge player. This time he's actually going to lead up through and take the linebacker. If you are of a certain age and played at a time when there was the I formation, this is no different than an old school ISO play, right? Where you've got the fullback that's leading right up through the B gap perhaps and taking on that middle linebacker, hoping to spring that running back for a big game, right? This is happening in the run game. It's a simple, old school I formation concept, except because it's through the gun, Ohio State can dress it up a little bit more. What do I mean by that? Well, at the top of the screen, you're going to see a slant flat because this is an RPO. This is a post-snap read for Julian Sayin. We've seen a lot of pre-snap reads where, he looks at the formation, decides, all right, I'm going to throw that quick screen, I'm going to throw that hitch, whatever it is. But instead here, he's actually waiting and reading the backside, or he's reading the defense after the snap of the football to see where it goes. Now, he's got this slant flat to the top. He's not going to take it because he's really got 3 over 2 because of this slant route, right? If he throws that slant to Jeremiah Smith, that safety is going to come up and rob it. So he decides, I'm not going to go there. He's going to go backside to what we call a glance route. This is really either a mix between a deep slant or a shallow post. But again, he's trying to hit that window at about 12 yards from the line of scrimmage where he's going to catch that right across the face. This is a cover 3 scheme, and he wants to catch it right and just past the face of this corner. And that's exactly what happens. Ball's a little high, but Tate's such a good athlete. He's able to not only catch it, but make a nice big play after, or run after the catch, right? Big play for Tate, one of many on the night. Now, when we watch from the end zone, you can see this a little bit more what we're talking about. Again, this is basically I formation football, right? There's your fullback. He's going to take away the middle linebacker. Now, one reason Ohio State, I believe, went to more zone is so they can run these schemes. It's a lot easier to run an RPO like this when you are not pulling a guard and potentially having a defensive tackle running right at your quarterback while he's standing there looking downfield. You don't want your quarterback taking those shots. A little bit easier to protect him when you're running a zone scheme, right? Now, you can see the quarterback with his eyes. He's reading that free safety, and that's important because that's where he's going to decide where to go with the ball. He now sees that safety is going to play downhill. He's running in to be that additional defender in the box. He's vacating some of his pass responsibilities, and that's going to leave this open space because you've got a cover 3 corner to the opposite side 17 who's gaining depth. He doesn't want to get beat over the top, so he's giving that space in front of him, and all that space in front of him is even more open because that second layer, the linebackers, the strong safety Parrish, you can see right by the Big Ten logo, they're all coming up to play run, and that creates this space to complete the pass. Now, of course, there were tons of RPOs we saw from Sayin, and I think this was a big step in his development. The amount of trust that Ohio State, Ryan Day, and Brian Hartline showed in Sayin to allow him to make a lot of these decisions post-snap. This touchdown pass to Jeremiah Smith was another great example. Now, this is another post-snap RPO. What do I mean? We've got a split zone play here. You can see the motioning tight end. His job is to come and seal that end. That outside linebacker is going to step up. His job is to, again, kick that guy out in case we decide to play run. But what we're going to see instead is Sayin's going to be reading the space, and because of that motioning tight end, that's going to open up a big space for the slant to Smith. Of course, we're going to get Sayin's going to pull the ball and deliver it really accurately, right on the money. Good catch, too, from a great receiver, obviously. That certainly helps, makes you look a lot better as a quarterback. But let's watch this play from the end zone view to see what's going on. Now, you can see as Sayin gets the snap, he's not looking at the back. He's not looking front side. He is looking at that gap where he wants to throw the football. He recognizes, we can't see it in this view, but Smith had outside, the cornerback had outside leverage on Smith, meaning an inside move like a slant was going to be there as long as that safety Parrish vacated. Now, Parrish follows the tight end, and he decides, well, if he's going to follow my job, I'm just going to blitz through that open gap, which is right there, which means Sayin he's got to get rid of the ball quickly, but he knows exactly where he's going with it. Of course, credit on this play. James Peoples absolutely stones this blitz. Great blitz pickup. You need all 11 guys to be there, but Sayin's got plenty of time and space to deliver a ball for a touchdown. Example of Ohio State putting faith in Sayin and allowing him to make decisions with the ball. This is what we call a PPO, or a pass option. You're like, well, what is it? That's just a pass play, right? Well, really what it is that you're running two different quick pass concepts on either side of the field. What we see is a designed swing pass, a screen where you've got Innis, who came in motion. You've got the tight end. You've got the receiver to that side. You've got 3 lead blockers who are really going to get out there and lead block for the running back who releases on just a little swing pass route. Now, Sayin is reading that middle linebacker who is going to follow that motion outside, right? That gives the defense equal numbers. One of those guys is not going to have someone blocking him, which is not great for the offense, of course. And so Sayin quickly turns his attention to the opposite side, where he's got the best receiver in the country, one-on-one on a quick stop route. It's just a quick, curl that he's going to hit on the back shoulder here. Really well designed, play to giving Sayin the option to decide what to do here. Again, we can watch Sayin's eyes from the end zone view. You can watch how quickly he's processing. He knows where to go with the ball. We get the motion. All we're going to get Sayin is reading that linebacker who's playing downhill. So he's just got to quickly flip his hips, make a good throw. Now, I think the ironic part about watching all those concepts, the run, the RPO, was actually set up by the deep ball that we saw early on, right? Now, the beauty of all those concepts working together is how much they can look alike. Any good modern offense, as a defense, it should all look the same regardless of whether it's a run, it's a underneath quick pass, it's a screen, or it's a deep ball. You want to present the defense with the same look, and that's what we saw so well from Ohio State on Saturday. But they actually opened up with the deep ball first, which opened up those other concepts, right? We know that Ohio State's had trouble throwing the ball downfield, so they actually got very aggressive, which opened up the underneath plays. Now, how did they do that? Now, this is that same I formation out of the shotgun look that we saw on one of the earlier RPOs. We're going to get a fake handoff here because this is actually just play action. Now, the beauty of that is you're going to get the defense flat-footed. They're looking in the backfield. It's still, a man coverage effectively, regardless of the scheme. It's a cover, it's a single high safety, right? We're going to talk about him in a second, which means whether this is a cover 3, a cover 1, it's a match coverage zone, whatever you want to call it. This is mano a mano with 2 of the best receivers in the country, just locked up with a corner one-on-one, right? And those corners now, because of this run fake, as you can see, the receivers are taking off. They are driving and sprinting downfield. Those corners are both on their heels trying to decide, do I need to play run coverage or do I need to get depth? And in their case, they need to get depth because as the corner, he has yet to even turn and flip his hips. Julian Sayin's already throwing the ball. The free safety, mind you, he's got to split the difference between these 2 routes. He's standing in the middle of the field. He has no hope of getting over the top, right? Ball is thrown perfectly. Free safety sprinting. He doesn't get there for another 30 yards or so. Now, we watch from the end zone view, of course, and what are you going to see? You're going to see a lot of things that we've already shown, right? These are similar concepts between these 2 teams. We've got this fake handoff. It looks like it's that ISO play, right, with the tight end acting as a fullback. We're seeing Parrish come off in pressure off the edge, right, as an additional run defender. He's playing hard on that. Donaldson's going to do a really nice job of picking that ball up. But Sayin just drops the ball in the bucket. Again, great throw, no doubt, but so much of the scheme matters. A great play from 2 great players. We're going to see Ohio State's going to motion out, right? They start in a bunch set. They shift out to really a 4 wide, with 2 tight ends here, and that's on purpose. But the concept is it's a little middle hook. The real read on this play is that middle hook. It's a high-low stretch over the middle, meant to really get Claire and Jeremiah Smith really, working that zone. It's a zone beater concept. Yes, you have the wheel rut on the outside from the running back, and you have Kaczmarek really just running a clear out route over the middle. Now, Tate's just a decoy, right? He's all the way over to the bottom of the screen. He's really not part of this play, at least from a conceptual design. He's just more of just to occupy the defense. Now, as the concept develops, you're going to see that Minnesota's in a Tampa 2. And that's important because this is one of the few zone schemes that's going to really take away this concept if executed properly. And it is, because you've got that middle linebacker with the arrow here who's going to run with Kaczmarek and take away the deep route. You got the safety at the top who's going to take away Smith's deep over, and then the linebacker is going to take away that middle hook. So Sayin doesn't really have a good place to go with this football. And instead of just running to this open space, right, there's plenty of room here. He's a decent enough athlete. He should be able to at least get 5 yards without doing anything. Instead, what he does is he flips his hips. And we said Tate isn't really part of this play. He's kind of already geared down. but we see him a scramble drill, and he's going to make this beautiful catch along the sideline. It was not intended for him at all, but this just shows his ability as a receiver to adjust on the fly and make one of the finest catches of the evening where he didn't expect to even be a part of the play. Now, we watched this from the end zone view, right? And pretty quickly what we're going to see is the pressure that's going to hit Sayin, and that's going to force him out of the pocket, right? Because we've got this twist up front, well executed by Minnesota. This defensive end's going to come through. Now, the concept where Sayin's looking with his eyes is he's saying, okay, well, what's the high-low stretch? And really, there's no stretch because the zone defender underneath the running or the linebacker, he's going to go up on that middle hook route to the tight end. But Coy Parrish, again, who we've said is the best player on that Minnesota roster, is just sitting on that dig from Smith. Now, yes, you might be able to throw that in there, but Sayin doesn't want to force anything. Let's take care of the football. So he moves out to his, he escapes to his left with the pressure. And this is maybe the most impressive throw I've ever seen him make. And I want to highlight this. Look at the way his hips are pointed in the direction of where he's going, and yet the torque that he's got his shoulders back. The flexibility and the torque that he generates from this. Yes, he's rolling to his left. He's not off balance, though. He's able to flip his shoulders back and generate the torque necessary to throw a great ball. So on Minnesota's first drive, we saw their game plan in action, how they wanted to use some of the tendencies that Ohio State's been putting on tape the last 5 games or so, 4 games under Matt Patricia, really trying to use those to their advantage. And the first thing we're going to notice is something we've seen quite a few times on both sides of the ball this season. We're going to use a receiver to kind of show whether this is man or zone. So we see one come in motion. We see Igbinosun widen out. That's not someone following him, so that means it's a zone look. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is the personnel. This is a first down play on the first possession, and the circled receivers for Minnesota, those are 3 wideouts, which means there's only 1 tight end, 1 running back, of course. But Ohio State's playing this with 3 down linebackers. That means that what Matt Patricia and company saw was that Minnesota is going to run the ball on early downs. We want to have our physical personnel in there to be ready to stop it. Now, of course, that's not what we saw a bunch on this first drive. What we saw instead was a lot of quick hitting pass plays. Now, this is just a spacing concept. We've seen Ohio State run a lot of this, right? They've got 2 outside curls with a hook over the middle, which is going to be the play, the pass that's caught. But we've also got a little swing pass to the running back just in case there was some man coverage, right? So what we're going to see instead is a really fast throw that's just going to get 5 yards over the middle, right? Ohio State's playing a cover 3 zone. We know they were playing zone, but that's really all Minnesota was looking for. Are they running zone? We've got a zone beater in that spacing concept. We're just going to throw this as soon as Drake Lindsey hits the top of his drop. And yes, there's not any no yards after the catch. Quick tackle, but again, it's a quick hitter. It's getting the ball moving. It's getting to 2nd and 5 very easily. Again, we see it from the end zone view. You can see the personnel for Ohio State and what they're working with. As the ball's snapped, watch what these defenders are. They're still gaining depth in their drop, right? These linebackers are backpedaling. Drake Lindsey doesn't hitch up. Again, he hits the very top of his drop. Immediately he's getting rid of the ball, getting a quick 5 yards. All right, so coming out of that first drive, we saw Matt Patricia on the sideline. He was able to look at the iPad. Again, a huge advantage for a guy like him. And they were able to adjust right on the fly, of course. They allowed a field goal on the opening drive, and then suddenly we saw a very different outcome for the rest of the game. Now, what are those adjustments that he made? Well, we're going to first off start by there's still a level of disguise here because it's important to show we've got 2 deep safeties. Yes, we're going to talk about what's happening on the front here in a second. You can see there's a bunch of guys mugged up on the front. You can see the corners are rolled up onto their receivers, certainly with the slot corner styles at the bottom of the screen. But again, the safeties are showing a 2 deep look. However, that's really not what we're going to get. What we're going to get instead, we saw a lot of zone on that first drive. That's what Ohio State's played a ton of this year. And yet, Lindsey drops back and suddenly he's seeing what we call one rat. What is that? Cover 1, of course, is that's man coverage. Cover 1, the 1 is that free safety in the middle of the field, playing center field. But it's one rat because now you've got in that red box, you've got Caleb Downs, who's essentially playing a level below that at the second level. He's reading the eyes and trying to take away all those crossers. Now, there's nowhere to go for Drake Lindsey with the football here. He's got plenty of time in the pocket, but most importantly, he's got number 2 reading his eyes, right? It looks like he's starting to move over to that number 2, that deep flag, perhaps the crossing route that Styles is covering up, and you're going to see Downs break on the ball right away, right? Well, there's nothing there, and Lindsey's got to pull, and he's got to escape the pocket. Now that you can feel the pressure coming, but most importantly, Downs isn't just sitting in the middle of the field. He's actually going to mirror the quarterback, right? He's actually playing as the spy. Not that Lindsey's a huge run threat, but that's exactly the role that Downs is going to play with a player as instinctual and just as valuable as Downs is. This is what he can bring to the table and use him best. You don't want him just manned up on a tight end who's running a decoy route, right? And what we end up seeing is Lindsey does escape the pressure and has to throw it away, lives another day. But again, this is just second down. This isn't a third down exotic package. Now, what they are doing up front is you can see these linebackers lurking. We know that they've run a lot of pressures like this with Reese, who's played a ton of snaps up on the line. He looks like he's coming in pressure, but then actually he's going to escape and play man coverage on that running back. And from this view, you can really see the technique that Downs is playing with, right? He's driving on anything that he thinks he sees from Drake Lindsey. But again, he's got his eyes just on the quarterback the same way the quarterback is looking at the secondary. So this is completely on the coverage. Pressure doesn't really get there. Big play. This is an example, though, of what Ohio State, I believe, expected to see more of in the game, right? We're going to see a 12 personnel. We got a tight end motioning in. We can see there's tight ends on either side of the formation. And now, of course, Ohio State's prepared with that 4-3 look. We've got Peyton Pierce standing as your Mike, and then Styles and Reese on either edge. Again, is it really creating a 6-1 look? So we've seen a lot of that 5-1. Now they're in a 6-1 this game with 4-3 personnel. Behind it, though, they're trying to disguise the coverage, whatever they're playing behind it. It looks like it could be quarters. They can really play whatever they want when they're running this 4 across. Now, there's only 2 wideouts, so there's less, combinations from a pass route perspective. They're playing top down, of course, keeping an umbrella on it. But what Ohio State's expecting to happen here is what they get, right? This is Minnesota's outside zone scheme. They're able to stuff it back, and largely because of that personnel walked up in a 6-1, right? They're not filling gaps from the interior with their inside linebackers. Instead, they're using that strong D-line and allowing that strong D-line to make plays. Now, this is a great example. We're going to see 92 make a play here, but I want to highlight 95. Malone played a great game. He was all over the tape. You can watch here, he's going to just drive this guard directly backwards. He's going to drive him backwards right into the lap of this running back, right? That is where the running back's going. He has nowhere to go. He's aiming for the C gap or the outside outside cheek of the tackle, right? Essentially in that C gap. Well, there's nowhere to get there because that guard just got pushed directly into his lap. He's obviously got to cut back. However, on that backside, you not only have Sonny Styles, who's playing the bootleg from Drake Lindsey, should he keep it on a play action fake, but you have Caden Curry just absolutely abusing a tight end, and that's going to allow them to make this play. So once Ohio State had played quite a bit of that cover 1 rat, that man coverage heavy scheme throughout the game, we saw Minnesota start to adjust and throw a few man beaters out there. They, of course, had to change their play calling. But then when that happened, of course, the chess move that Matt Patricia plays goes back to his zone schemes. And that's what we're going to see here. This is a 3rd and long, but you can see there's only one highlighted deep player here, Styles. And that's because it looks like this is another cover 1, right? It looks like you've got man coverage across the board. You see Styles moving with the tight end. This looks like cover 1, looks like man coverage, but that's, of course, not what Drake Lindsey and Minnesota is going to get. They're going to get a Tampa 2. They're going to get Jermaine Matthews is going to drop out and play a deep half. You're going to see Styles roll over the top, and this is going to be a 2 deep, 5 under scheme. Of course, the player in the middle of all that is Jalen McClain. Typically, that's Caleb Downs' role, but Downs is elsewhere in this coverage. He's sitting up there, on the outside of the hash. And that's also going to throw off what Minnesota's expecting because they're expecting number 2 to be that pull runner player. Now, McClain does a great job in this role because you're going to see the route combination here. They've got this deep seam route that McClain does a great job of taking away, allowing Matthews to stay out wide. The safeties are outside the number or outside the hashes, and they can trust that McClain's going to run deep. You see Downs taking that deep curl, and then Styles is going to take away that short underneath crosser. Now, this is great defense that we're going to see from Ohio State, really just picking up these schemes, and that's going to allow for this sack. Now, everybody's going to credit Arvell Reese with the sack. Of course, had a great year filling up the stat sheet, becoming an NFL draft prospect. But to me, the story are his teammates, right? Not just the coverage behind him forcing it, but the other teammates across the defensive line. You can see Reese lined up on the edge. He's a stand-up end. He's played a ton of snaps out there. Actually, he's played more snaps on the defensive line than he has as an off-ball linebacker, at least according to PFF. However, on this play, it's 92, the guy that has really come on in the last few weeks, Caden Curry. Now, I want you to watch here. We're going to see a dip and rip move. We'll put it in slow motion so you can really see this. He's going to rip underneath that defender, right? And then that's going to allow, on the opposite side, there's going to be room. He's going to create that pressure. Curry is, at least from the backside. And then on the front side, we've got a little bit of a twist, a stunt where the tackle Smith is going to loop around because Bo Atkinson's going to occupy two blockers. He's going to come around the top. Drake Lindsay sees it. Oh, shoot, I've got to cut back. And suddenly, who's waiting for me there? It's number 8, the last guy you want to see. Clear, I'm not trying to diminish Arvell Reese in any way, shape, or form. Because this is actually, I think, one of his best reps of the night now. For all the versatility he's shown as an end, as a pass rusher, all these things, I actually think what's been a little bit overlooked is his ability as a traditional off-ball linebacker. And I think this play is one of the best reps he's put on film this season, just showing what he can do in this role. Now, you see him pressed up at the line. He and Styles are both there, right? They're both mugged up, Reese is in the A gap. We've seen him play a ton in the A gap, creating almost like a bear front. And he's doing the same here. If you look at, he's over the center. You've got your two guys over the guards and Malone and Smith. But that's really not who's going to make this play, at least not initially. Now, what we're going to see right away is, once again, Malone is really going to create that penetration. He's going to drive that guard back, and that's going to keep Reese free. Now, Will Smith also does a great job. He steps across. This is a zone look. Now, that center, who you can kind of see who's covered up by Reese, that center is trying to help on Smith long enough for the guard to get around and be able to take Smith all the way. And then the center is going to try to climb up and block Arvell Reese. However, Smith and Malone do such a good job of clogging the middle. And then meanwhile, Reese is just going to mirror. He's not trying to race to get to a gap. Yes, you can see that gap to the outside, but he's not trying to run and sneak through and create a play in the backfield. He's actually doing a great job. I'm going to mirror, and I'm going to keep my shoulders parallel to the line of scrimmage and shuffle. I'm not going to turn and try to cut to, cheat a little bit. We see Zion Grady on the outside doing a good job of holding up the tackle, and that's going to allow Reese to finally chase down the back once the back really declares where he's going. Now, Reese, again, doesn't get credited with this tackle, but he completely makes this play, forcing that running back to go wherever he needs to. We'll watch the whole thing in full speed again, right? We're able to see this. We get the linebackers mugged up at the line, right? Malone gets the penetration. Reese is mirroring, and there's somebody there. And then Grady's going to ultimately make the tackle.